2030.
Saudi Arabia, the public investment fund.
It's a
There's
big
a lot of
mission.
excitement
It's
around
transformational
NEOM specifically.
change. Every aspect of the kingdom, economic, social, cultural, religious.
The 2030.
This is the 2030.
Yalla.
This is the 2030 episode 47. Hello, Dr. Hannah. I'm Mawhiba. How are you? Nice to see you.
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. As you know, because we've been talking since then, I just got back from Las Vegas yesterday for a very short, for a very short un-Ramadani visit to Sin City. But yeah,
very
so
un-Ramadani.
Very inverse Ramadan. You may hear it in my voice just a little bit, so I apologize for that. And yeah, I was there for a client. It's a company called
That's
Angel
kind
AI.
of a 180, right? Like, I'm leaving Riyadh. Let's go to Vegas.
Yeah, it's like it's an escalation in my exodus from Saudi Arabia for Ramadan. I took
sounds
it up
like
a
it.
notch, several notches. Yeah. So yeah, that's I just took it. I took it to the extreme, and then I'll be back. To the other extreme. But I like to live a life of excitement and danger, of course.
In binaries.
In binaries, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was great. And have you been to Vegas before?
I have never been to Las Vegas. Never. People say it's really fun. It's fun to like go for the shows, and it's fun. People even say like it's a good place to take kids. Like I've heard. I don't know. No, I never went. I've driven. I drove through California once. Like I drove from Seattle all the way down to San Diego. And then we thought maybe we'd do a little Vegas detour, but instead we went and visited a friend in Palm Springs. And then by the time we were in Palm Springs, we're like, oh my God, we're almost there, but we didn't do it. So that was the closest I ever got to Vegas was Palm Springs.
I honestly don't think you're missing anything.
No.
I think it's super, with all due respect to, everybody, but I think it's super overrated.
With all due respect to Vegas?
To Vegas, to the citizens of Las Vegas. I'm not a gambler, so I don't gamble at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like super overwhelming, right? So it's like, you feel like you're there for a month when you're there for a day. I don't know why people say it's good for children. Maybe, but there's a lot of scary things to see. Yeah, I
feel like I don't really feel like when I think about top 10 destinations for kids, Vegas comes onto my list. It doesn't pop into my mind ever. But then sometimes when I say to people, oh yeah, I've never been, they're like, oh, well, you should go and you could take your kids too. It's kid friendly. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Didn't see a lot of kids, which is, for me with three around me all the time, not bad, right? I was there it was a nice break. It was a really nice break. I was there for a company called Angel AI. It's one of my clients. The CEO was doing an event launch there for a company called Angel Twin. It's a JV. He's just such a smart dude. And it was the event that he had was so fun. Really enjoyed that part of it. And it was definitely crazy. I was at the Wynn, which was nice, and my room could see the Sphere, and I kept thinking about how much bigger the new Mukaab at New Maraba is going to be, 70 times the size. And I was like, this is amazingly big. So I don't know, there's something, I feel like children would like looking at that, but that's one thing. And that's 30 seconds. And they're like, what else is there?
And they're done.
Yeah, then they're done. But yeah, really cool company, great guy. But it's really funny. Vegas is one of the last places. I haven't been anywhere in the last 5 years where it was acceptable to smoke cigarettes and cigars inside. And the Wynn is
in Vegas?
Yeah. The Wynn is a nice casino. And I was like, and my buddy had a pack of cigarettes, and I was like, oh dude, give me a cigarette. We can smoke them inside. But it doesn't smell like smoke everywhere. I don't know how they do it, but it was one of those things where I was like, I have to do this because it's we're inside now, and you
good
just don't do this anymore.
Filtration maybe? Or...
Yeah, good HVAC situation in there. It's got to be. Weather was really
Is it
cold.
Noisy, I wonder. Sorry.
Well, yeah, it's noisy with background uppity music, and then people gaming, and as you know, there is a casino coming to the Middle East region shortly in
So I've heard, yeah.
Dubai. You've been to casinos before though, right?
Not really, no.
Really? Okay. Good.
When I was in the Philippines, there was a casino in the hotel I was staying in. And so I had to walk through it, but that was kind of it.
Okay.
Like, I have not been anywhere where there's casinos. I mean, there's casinos everywhere in London, actually, and gambling is a huge part of British life. Like, they actually make fun of Americans making a big deal out of gambling and how it's like only legal in certain places and whatever. There's also quite a few like Native American reservations in Seattle that have casinos on them. I've just never felt any draw to go to them. So no, I haven't been.
Okay. Well, you know, you're
I don't
still
feel like
young.
I'm missing out.
Yeah. No, I don't get the gambling thing either, but I know it's like a huge thing, and it's a huge thing here in the US, but I know it's a huge thing in the UK. It's like
it's
and,
huge.
and people are like gambling
Everybody
on like
bets
soccer
on
and stuff.
everything.
Yeah,
everything.
What's that? Yeah.
And like literally like kids bet because it's just part of the culture. Like it's a big deal. But yeah, it's just not really my thing. Also, it's haram, but like whatever. Like that's not, like that you can still go into a casino and see what people are. It's just not, I'm not drawn to it. I find zero appeal.
Yeah.
So
I can see that. Yeah. Well, I bet you that we have a terrific episode coming up. You're going to be leading us with a deep dive in just a second,
yes.
Which is good because I need a breather from just talking for 5 minutes after that weekend. But yeah, and we're looking forward to that. And then we will have an interview coming up, the episode after this one. And then we'll be hitting the Eid holiday. So we may have a little bit of a choppy schedule. So we wanted to get a few episodes in before Eid. And then we'll be back to our normally scheduled programming.
Or
such
some
that it is. Yeah. Anyway, let's get to a deep dive.
Let's get to a deep dive. So in my deep dive today, I'm going to be talking about something that I call Mawhiba Capital. I'm really excited actually to share this. So we're going to dive into how young Saudis are leveraging access to science capital in order to reshape their futures and kind of move around traditional barriers in education and work. And it's kind of a really exciting topic for me because this is where I do a lot of my research. So as we all know, Saudi's Vision 2030 has a very strong push toward STEM education, science in general. I mean, think about the Space Agency and some of the other investments that are being made in science and technology, engineering and math. That's what STEM stands for. But one key initiative that's really moving the needle on that and leading this movement for young people is the National Olympiad for Scientific Creativity, which is known in Arabic as IBDAع, and it's run by Mawhiba, which is a not-for-profit educational organization that's actually called the King Abdulaziz and His Companions Foundation for Giftedness and Creativity, known as Mawhiba for short. So last week, Mawhiba announced the names of 40 young Saudi men and women that have been selected to represent the kingdom at the Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair. This year, it's going to be in Columbus, Ohio in May. 200 made it to the final and 40 of them made it to the Saudi international team. So some of you may remember that it was in Los Angeles last year, and I was there with the students and had been on the journey with them throughout that kind of filtration. So in 2024, I was learning all about that process, and my paper is currently under review, but I thought that this would be a great time to talk about that since they just announced the new winners. Every year, thousands of students from across the kingdom compete in IBDAع, hoping to make it to the global stage at ISEF, the International Science and Engineering Fair that's sponsored by Regeneron. In 2024, around 200,000 students applied, and this year, a record-breaking 291,000 students applied, which is a huge jump from 21 students that applied in 2007. But the twist is the success in IBDAع really isn't just about science. That's a big part of it, but it's about networks. And this is where I come in. So the power of science capital or Mawhiba Capital. So science competitions in general, like IBDAT, don't just test knowledge, they build capital. And by capital, what I mean is more than just skills. The science capital is access that students gain to mentorship, research opportunities, and exclusive academic circles within their scientific fields. And the top performers, they're great scientists. They're incredible. They compete with PhD student level research, but they're great networkers. And what I argue in my research is what they're building is a shift in the traditional ways that social capital has been accumulated in Saudi in the past. So in Saudi, traditional career access could be shaped, not necessarily, but oftentimes by who you know, or the term wasta can be thrown around. So, middlemen or people that can act as middlemen to kind of help you gain access through deep-rooted family connections, sometimes tribal connections, sometimes friendships, but really strong social networks that are kind of deeply embedded and handed down through generations. But these young Saudis are really showing us that they're flipping the script a little bit on this. So instead of relying on kind of that old school wasla, they're building new networks through STEM competitions and through this participation in Mawhiba. So the IBDAT journey takes students from small regional competitions to the national stage, then to ISEF in the US, where they meet global mentors, industry leaders, and university scouts. I actually watched a university scout approach one of the Saudi students and offer her a place at Oxford last year. But it really is all of those connections are also making in Saudi. They are basically meeting the best and brightest in their fields, the other students along the way. That's what's making the big impact. It's the mentors, the counselors, the professors, and actually even other parents. These aren't just one-time connections. They're lifelong relationships that they're building that can really open doors for them to the best universities, schools, research grants, tech, industry jobs, and whatever. It's incredible what they're doing. And also, Mawhiba is really leveling the playing field in terms of gender equality. What's super about it is it's 50-50. You get 50% of these 40 students are girls, 50% are boys. And this is, social capital and science capital in particular is often very gendered, and boys usually do much better in topics like physics and maths, and they're selected to actually participate in those types of competitions, and also oftentimes university access for young men into those fields is just more of a natural step, and women tend to shy away from those specializations. But Mawhiba really does kind of level that playing field. IBDAT offers equal access to boys and girls, and the research shows that actually young Saudi women in Saudi Arabia are thriving in these competitions. They're breaking into elite networks on the same footing as their male peers. And actually, when they announced the winners' names, when I was in that hall last year, you could just feel the room vibrating when they would announce the names. But oftentimes, yes, you did get those support networks. So the girls would support each other, the boys would support each other, but everybody was cheering for everybody. But it definitely, you could see that there was a bit of a competition there to see who was going to make it. And obviously, they all support each other, even if they're in a competition, because they know they're then going to go and represent Saudi. So they kind of wear the flag when they go abroad, and that's a big part of it. But, there's some real impact here. In 2023, Saudi students won 16 major awards at ISEF, including 2 global first place wins. And they're not just bringing home trophies. They're meeting with the Crown Prince. Mohammed bin Salman had an audience with them. They're getting featured in the media. They're actually followed like celebrities while they're there. They're securing university scholarships. Take Faisal al-Mhesh, for example. His award-winning project developed an electrocatalyst that produces hydrogen from seawater, first place in chemistry on a global stage. Or Latif al-Ghannam, who placed second and is now competing, and then competed again in 2024 and won again. So they're not just competing, they're shaping Saudi Arabia's future in sustainability, in medicine, and AI. I think there's 28 different areas that they do their research in. And just to pan out a tiny bit and put this into kind of the broader picture of Saudi and education. So Saudi's performance on international standardized testings like PISA and TIMSS has historically been far below global averages, actually. And investments in this area has really led to recent improvements in the last rounds. And it points to a continued education strategy that focuses on STEM for the future of work. So several longstanding education initiatives, both inside schools and run by nonprofits like IBDA, have been elevated to occupy a new position of prestige, to some degree, actually urgency as well. And so the scholarship program has been redesigned to focus on educational excellence. It narrows the number of institutions that people can study in to the most elite in the world. Otherwise, they can access education within the kingdom. They also are aligning the scholarship program with labor market needs and looking at specific areas where we do have a need to skill new talent. And young Saudis, they really do understand this urgency. Think about it. 291,000 students from across the kingdom applied to compete in these science fairs in order to then maybe make it to the final. But they were all engaged in thinking about science in order to submit these applications. And this is just one little strand of what Mawhiba does. So Mawhiba runs so many different science, maths, and other kind of like smaller competitions for students from quite young ages within schools, but also as summer programs and outside of schools. They also contribute to so much of the content that is out there for young people to access in order to prepare for these competitions. And then they are building networks with universities. So the students who have good projects can access labs, go work alongside professors in these labs. It's incredible. And actually, obviously, the better the university, the more likely it has the equipment that these students can use to actually build their projects, prototypes, whatever it is that they're doing. But that's actually improving university facilities because there's competition amongst universities on who can sponsor these students, who can provide the mentorship and the guidance and the supervision for these students' science projects, because it's very prestigious for them also. And the students end up publishing, and they're in high school. It's just insane. So a lot of these secondary students are building their science capital by exposure to science events, educational programs, competitions in order to secure their future work in the new Saudi economy. IBDA is just one brand of prestigious science competitions, and Saudi students have achieved a phenomenal track record. ISEF organizers believe that this is indeed a testament to the level of mentorship and funding that the kingdom is dedicating to the program. So it's led to an increased interest in high stakes extracurricular academic competitions for these young people. And across the country as well as internationally. And as I mentioned, over the past few years, the IBDA competition has drawn thousands of applicants from all corners of the country, not just the elite schools, not just elite students. It really is elevating kind of national and international standards that these students are achieving. It's, I think, one of a kind and phenomenal. But my final thought, this is a new era of opportunity. The big takeaway, IBDA isn't just about science. It is, and it's massively about science. These are really, really cool nerds, but it's about social mobility, and the students are proof that access to the right networks can redefine opportunities. And as Saudi Arabia continues to invest in STEM education, one thing is clear. As one student told me, your network is your net worth.
I mean, it feels like yesterday, right, that you were in Los Angeles with this group from last year, I believe filming a documentary there for the paper, seeing it in action. And it's really cool because this was very early on in the launch of what was then a brand new show. And it was something that I didn't really know anything about, and just thought it was so cool what was happening. And it makes you wonder which of these future leaders that are being gathered in Columbus, Ohio this year, Los Angeles last year, will end up being famous household names, not just in Saudi Arabia, but in the region and the world. Because I mean, what this is the best and the brightest that are not handpicked because of who they know or who they are, but what they can be and what they can accomplish on their own. These guys and girls are the future. We talk about the King Abdullah Scholarship Program a lot. That was a program that ran from the early 2000s to sort of 2015, 2016, 2017. There's a new version of it now that's smaller and more focused on a more select number of schools. But the results of that program we are seeing and feeling now in Saudi Arabia. You're seeing these Western educated technocrats now start to rise up the ranks of ministries and the private sector, and what they learned in the US and what they brought to the US and left there, you're now seeing sort of the product of that. And this is like a hyper elite version, smaller version of that. But what it will do is it will define Saudi Arabia's future. You're talking about a place that wants to lead the world in AI and in telecom and other places like that, other sectors like that, I should say. Well, those sectors need leaders, and those leaders are, it's human capital. So they're being developed now for those future industries and to lead the world, not just Saudi Arabia, in those areas. It's so cool. This program is amazing. That's all I have to add to it, because I think your rundown was awesome. But I just think that like this is the type of thing that we love talking about on this show. It's not something that's going to make the front page of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post, but the impact that it will have on the future of Saudi Arabia, the future of the world, is you can't even measure it, but you can think about the potential. It's so awesome. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And with the scholarship program, right, the Custodian of the Two Holy Mosques scholarship program today, as you said, it's narrower, but actually I think the tracks make a lot of sense, because if you get into one of the top 30 universities globally, you can do whatever you want. You can specialize in like underwater basket weaving. If you get into Oxford and there's a program, it's whatever you want to do if you're in one of those top 30 universities. But then within the other tracks, if the programs align with some of the kind of labor market needs that Saudi's identified, then again, there's over 200 universities, and they're not just in the West anymore. You can go study in South Korea, you can study in Japan. You do need to show language proficiency if you're going to go to one of these countries that doesn't where the mode of instruction isn't necessarily in English. But there are a lot of other tracks now when you think about scholarships abroad. But I think it's also important to recognize that there's, I think, 37 universities inside Saudi Arabia, right? And they're public universities and private universities that students can access, plus incredible training programs inside the kingdom where people can learn incredible technical skills. Some of these scholarship programs are the Custodian of the Two Holy Mosques one, but others are from different companies as well. Like Aramco has a huge scholarship program that is incredibly coveted, because you come back and you work in Aramco, and a lot of people really do want that. But I think the point is there is a lot more focus on what people are doing. You can access one of the top 30 universities globally, go study and be amazing at whatever it is that you want to do. Otherwise, we have incredible universities here, and we're really upping the game. We have a new strategy on how universities are run that's increasing competition internally to make sure that the universities feel like there's an impetus to continuously improve, to innovate. The education sector is changing. It's very, very different. Obviously, with education, it's a slower moving machine because you don't see the results right away. And it takes a little bit of time for, the whole process to unfold. But the urgency is quite obvious. And things like this get people excited to learn and to be nerdy. Like, you should have seen some of the badges. There's one of the events that they do at ISEF is they have this badge exchange. And so the students will be wearing badges, usually representing their countries. And it's a student-only event. Like, the mentors and the teachers aren't really inside the room, and they just go around introducing themselves to each other. So like, the Mexican students are meeting the Argentinian students, are meeting the South Korean students, are meeting the Chinese students, are meeting the Russian students. It's just like a huge kind of melting pot of science nerds, and they're giving each other badges, and then they're putting them on. But then they have these other badges that say things like, I don't know, like puns that have to do with atoms and and protons and whatever, like I'm not nerdy like that, and I wish I could be. I can't. They're so incredibly bright and intelligent. So yeah, I'm more of a social science nerd, and I probably make jokes about Foucault or whatever, but like it's just a very, very, very exciting thing. I just get like so much energy thinking about our future when I think about these students.
Yeah, I'm really glad you made the point about Saudi universities as well, because when the King Abdullah Scholarship Program was launched, there really wasn't the university system as we are seeing it now develop. It was not the way it is now. So there wasn't a great outlet for these, what ended up being 100,000 students a year to find and nurture their talent and by leaders who know how to do it, right? And so, but now you have KAUST and you have King Saud University and Prince Sultan University, and those universities are starting to be known more for their specialties, right? With Prince Sultan being known for financial leadership and the financial services sector more than other things. And that's what a university ecosystem, when it's very developed, does. I mean, some of the best schools in the US for example, mining and anything related to minerals is the Colorado School of Mining and Minerals. And it's because of its location and because it's a specialty.
Yeah.
That's part of an ecosystem developing. And so what we're seeing is sort of like with the vision, right? You have these goals that were announced in 2016, 2017. Some of them seemed like they were impossible or nearly impossible to achieve. And then some were achieved way ahead of schedule. For the ones that are harder to achieve or are behind progress, you adjust and retool and recalibrate what you're doing to make sure that you reach that goal. And so what is happening in the university, not the university ecosystem, with youth in general, is you're having this, you had the King Abdullah Scholarship, it was very general, and it was go abroad, learn languages, a cultural diffusion exercise as well. And then you have that mature a little bit. And then what's happening with this is, I mean, these young Saudis are in line with the best in the world. They're winning some of these prizes, right? So they're now at the same level of quality as students from anywhere in the world. It's so cool.
Two more points. Sorry, I just get really excited. So they also win industry prizes, right? So there's a first and second and third and fourth place within your category, but then there's industry prizes. So there are companies that are there, just like, even if you don't win as like the best research project, you might get an industry award that is a scholarship to attend a summer program or mentorship, or it might be money toward your research. So there's some incredible industry awards as well, and Saudi gives them as well. So within the IBDAع system, before they go abroad to ISEF, there are students that are winning, those top 40 spots, but then there are students that are getting industry awards that might not be in the top 40. So they're recognized for the excellence in their research as well. And that could be from different universities, but some of those are also international awards for research that happens inside Saudi that's very much parallel to some of the industries that are important within the kingdom. So it is just an incredible system that not enough people know about, but more people in Saudi are getting to know. And like I said, the more these students are doing this, the more people do know about it, because the networks that they're building are phenomenal. These students are in hundreds, they told me, hundreds of WhatsApp groups with a lot of overlap, but that's where they're giving each other advice and tips. And they don't even know how many. They don't know how many messages they get every day. They don't know how many groups they're in. They don't know how many overlap in those groups, because they give each other access to all of this information. They're sharing it because they want to see each other succeed. It's incredible. And the last thing is like the point that you made about how a lot of these kind of young people that went abroad on the scholarship program have come back and are making a difference. I can't tell you how many of these students that I met that were competing last year spoke English like they were from Minnesota or Kansas or wherever, because they were the children of students that were on scholarship. And so they learned English very, very fluently while they were abroad with their parents, who were getting their master's and PhDs and bachelor's degrees. And so you have this really interesting, diverse group of students that have already been exposed to lots of networks. So they're really good at it. They're not the only students. There are many that had never left the kingdom. I met some that had never left their village. It was so incredible, right? But that's the thing. It's just a really exciting place where Saudi brings the rest, like Mawhiba brings the rest of Saudi together. And students who are from Riyadh are for the first time engaging with and being really close with students from Jeddah, students from Jizan, students from Tabuk, students from the Eastern Province. It's a great, like a lot of students from Al Hassan, Eastern Province, they do really well. By the way, the Eastern Province always do the best. Just FYI.
Oh, yeah, a little plug for the Eastern Province in there. I love that.
It's true though. I'm not making it up.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway.
I also think that when you mentioned this earlier, your network is your net worth.
That was a quote from one of my research participants.
It's also my buddy's favorite kind of quote to leverage, and it's true.
Yeah.
And the reality is that it's also about, fraternity is a wrong word, but it's like they will have this sort of like
camaraderie, maybe
camaraderie. Yeah, they'll have that forever. And so 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, when they see somebody at a conference, at a meeting, on a phone call, whatever it is, and they're they're like, wait, you did Mawhiba in 2024, 2025. Like, I was there with you. We were hanging out. Do you remember? And they'll immediately reconnect a lot faster than, just somebody meeting you cold. You'll have that bond with you forever, and that bond will help you, and you'll be able to help others that were part of this camaraderie, if you want to call it, forever. I mean, it'll be something that'll be an impression in our life forever. So hats off to them. Hats off to you, Dr. Hannah. That was a really terrific deep dive. Get to the news. We have fresh data on the tourism space in Saudi Arabia from the Future Hospitality Summit, FHS. According to the latest tally, Saudi Arabia is expecting 362,000 new hotel rooms by 2030. This is all part of the kingdom's ambitious $110 billion tourism expansion plans. We've talked about it a little bit on the show. The kingdom welcomed 30 million international tourists in 2024, up from 27.4 million in 2023. That's a lot of international visitors. That is almost halfway to reach its goal by 2030 of 70 million international visitors. Hotel room revenues hit $5.6 billion between January and October 2024, so not even the full year. And that is a 3.5% increase from 2023 and a 26.5% increase from 2019. So there's some serious growth going on that is reflected in hotel room pricing. For anybody visiting Saudi Arabia recently, they know what I'm talking about. Key markets such as Riyadh and Medina recorded strong growth in occupancy rates and ADR performance. So yeah, you've got a red hot tourism market going on in Saudi Arabia right now. No doubt.
Absolutely. I've met so many people this past year that have gone to Saudi as tourists that had no connections to Saudi, which I thought was super interesting. So as you mentioned, this data was released by the Future Hospitality Summit ahead of its 2025 edition, taking place from May 11th to the 13th at the Mandarin Oriental in Al-Faisaliya, Riyadh.
Ooh, I almost lost my hand. Yeah, love that.
Is that where that happened?
Yeah, that's where that quote unquote surgery happened. Cool.
At the Mandarin Oriental? Okay.
Yeah, at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel. So avoid room 809 or whatever it was. Sliced my hand open.
I'm not going to ask you that much more about that. So anyway,
okay,
the 2024...
we'll move on. I'm sorry. But every time I see it, I got to say something. Okay, go ahead.
The 2024 edition of the Future Hospitality Summit attracted 1,400 delegates and generated over $1.1 billion in business deals. And I think that's what a lot of people miss with all of these kind of incredible summits that are happening in Riyadh. They're really about partnerships, deals, collaboration, and meeting people and networking because they're drawing in a global audience. And with tourism, that's what you want, right? So, of course, upcoming global events kind of help push tourism, help this tourism push by Saudi so much. For instance, the 2029 Asian Winter Games, World Expo 2030. By the way, the World Expo is going to be on in Japan when I'm there. So I'm actually kind of excited to go see the Saudi Pavilion, but also FIFA World Cup in Saudi 2034. So many big events coming where we're definitely going to need those rooms for people to stay in, plus, I'm sure.
Yeah. That's so cool. You're going to see the World Expo in Japan. That's amazing. That's really cool.
So I went to Expo. Oh, maybe I'll age myself.
Went to the Paris one in 1870 or something.
Yeah, I went to that one. No, you know that the Space Needle in Seattle was part of the expo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I wasn't there for that one. That was like the early 1900s or like the 1800s as well. No, I went to Expo in Canada in Vancouver. I'll let people look it up. I'm not going to say the year. I was really little, I don't even remember it, but I had this doll that had Expo in the name of and the year and Vancouver, BC on it. So that was the only Expo. I didn't make it to Expo in Dubai. So I'm kind of excited for Expo Japan and Expo Riyadh.
So I've never been to an expo before. I did a LinkedIn post where, which was exactly 2030 days ahead of the Riyadh Expo. And
wow.
And I've done a bunch of reading and research on the Riyadh on the expo
that?
in general. Yeah, isn't that wild? It's the World Expo is the coolest thing ever, and it obviously dates back to the World's Fair, but so much so many modern conveniences and technologies were unveiled at these world fairs. It's really an unbelievable opportunity for the world to come together and talk about its future as a global human race and what we're doing with tech and science. And it's really cool to think about what Riyadh will be like. I shared some pictures on my LinkedIn that are like show the Saudi World's Fair, the Expo 2030 Riyadh. I keep calling it World's Fair. I kind of like World's Fair better because it kind of has this kind of carnival vibe to it. But the Saudi sort of presence for that is going to be insane. It's going to be really amazing. I cannot wait to hear about the one in Japan. You're going to have to like send some pics so we can post or whatever. I don't know, whatever. But I want to see it. Tell me about it. Yeah.
Just to fact check myself, though, like it wasn't the early 1900s or the 1800s in Seattle when the Space Needle was built. It was in 1962. It just,
okay.
you know.
So you were like 10 or whatever. I'm totally
wow.
Yeah, so was obviously the Eiffel Tower was part of a World Expo.
Yeah, that's the one that was the 1800s, right? And I think that my confusion is when you're going kind of through the hallway to get into the elevator that takes you to the top of the Space Needle, they do a comparison between the Eiffel Tower and the Space Needle and kind of its construction, whatever. But 2.3 million visitors came to the 62 World's Fair in Seattle. And apparently it was once the tallest structure west of the Mississippi.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, one of the best books I've ever read, Devil in the White City, is about the Chicago World's Fair. It's fantastic. The mayor was shot on the last day of that World's Fair, which is super wild. That whole like that book and that story is a high recommend. We are way off topic once again, as happens on this podcast very frequently. But anyway, the cool stuff on tourism data.
So anyway, Saudi Arabia's PIF and one of its subsidiaries, Scopely, plans to acquire the gaming division of Niantic, the company behind the popular mobile game, guess which one? Pokemon Go, in a deal worth $3.5 billion. Pokemon Go.
That was like a while ago, though, right? It's still
That's
popular?
what I thought. Apparently, like the acquisition marks the latest step in Saudi's push to establish itself as a global gaming and esports hub. Obviously, Saudi is hosting the 2025 Esports World Cup. But Pokemon Go is a mobile game that blends augmented reality with real world exploration. I guess you see like Pokemons and you run after them and try and like get them. Anyway, it's still one of the kind of highest grossing mobile games, apparently. It has 30 million active monthly players.
Whoa. Okay. Still a thing then. Yeah.
I
awesome.
remember like when it was new and like you'd see people running around and you knew that they were playing Pokemon Go. I don't see them anymore, but just like with the pandemic, people just all look crazy. I don't know. Anyway, sorry, not to say that if you are one of those 30 million active monthly subscribers, you're crazy. It's just, if you don't know what they're doing, it doesn't always look natural, but whatever. Anyway, Niantic has not addressed concerns about how location data collected in the future is going to be handed over to Scopely and its Saudi Arabian owners. So there's still, I think, some things to iron out with the deal, but Pokemon Go is basically getting acquired, which is very exciting for $3.85 billion.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of monthly active users and players. I kind of didn't see that coming. I mean, it was such a fad when it came out. Everyone was doing it. It was like,
when was it super popular?
I don't know, like 2009, 2010, maybe.
Something like that.
I kind of remember it was like, but it seemed like Pogs. Like they were just like, they were everywhere. And then it was just kind of like, oh, like people aren't doing this anymore. There are concerns on this deal because Niantic has, which is based in California, it's a U.S. company. It has a really big and deep sort of database of location data from its users. So like users are using this and they're walking around using a phone, I guess, to look at things and play this game with augmented reality. And so it has a really large mapping kind of element. And so a lot of the criticism that's come out has been, is Scopely with this acquisition. Scopely is owned by Savvy Games Group. Savvy is owned by the PIF, which was launched in 2023, I think, to sort of lead its push into video games. Are they going to get access to this, this location data? And one of the issues, of course, is that you'll have its AI mapping business from Niantic is spinning off, and they have two different subsidiaries or companies called Campfire and Wayfarer. Those are tools to track players as they play, so they know exactly where they are and what they're doing. So there's some uproar on the internet and among these 30 million users. Oh, come on, you have a powerful interest group there, sort of wondering what's happening with this. But this shows Saudi Arabia is quite serious about what it wants to do in esports and gaming, and they're willing to plunk down significant cash to make it a reality. So, it's a big deal. Cool. Okay. Saudi leadership has approved. Okay, sorry, I'm going to do this again. So this is new, right? Okay. Sorry. I was like, wait, I didn't write this shit. Okay. Moving on, Saudi leadership has approved 3 billion riyals of Ramadan aid disbursement. The Saudi leadership has approved the disbursement of over 3 billion riyals, which is 800 million greenbacks, to Social Security beneficiaries as part of an aid initiative during the holy month of Ramadan. Over 3 billion, I should say, will be given as follows. Each breadwinner will receive 1,000 riyals, and each dependent in the household will receive 500 riyals. So is this to everybody? Like everybody gets it? Everybody, this is just like a bonus, or just for those who need it?
Those who are already receiving Social Security benefits.
Okay. I was like, whoa, it's like a stimulus check. But okay, so this is just for those who are on Social Security benefits. The funds will be deposited directly into the bank accounts of the beneficiaries on Tuesday, March 18th, the SPA said. I don't see the word breadwinner written out a lot like that. So I was just kind of curious. Okay.
I use the word breadwinner a lot in my research, actually, because I talk a lot about stereotypes and kind of boxes that people get put into. And actually with a lot of choices that young people make when they're thinking about their futures, men still do have that pressure to be the primary breadwinner within the family, and women still have that pressure to be the primary caretaker within the family. I think that's global, but it's definitely very true of Saudi youth. And so I use that word quite often to say that even when pathways are opened up for women, a lot of times they kind of sort themselves into different pathways because of other social pressures. But that's also a tangent.
But it just kind of seems like a bit of a term that, like primary provider or something. It just doesn't seem very PC. I guess we're in that era though. So anyway.
Really
yeah.
though? Oh, we are in the era of not being PC, but I don't understand what's wrong with breadwinner.
I don't know, but I mean,
you could be the breadwinner as a woman.
Yeah, you could be, right? Yeah, you could be.
There's no gender thing attached to it. Caregiver, breadwinner.
Right. Let's just, I don't know, just earner.
No.
But anyway, breadwinner. Nope. There you go. Winning bread.
Anyway, so it's interesting because this is a cash deposit, right? So it's a targeted cash deposit. So it's not, like you said, it's not a stimulus check. But it's interesting when you think about how benefits are distributed in order to combat low income. And there is an argument for depositing cash in everybody's bank account, right? And thinking about universal basic income is an argument for how to make sure that you get rid of negative incentives when you're thinking about household level. Because it's interesting that this is at the household level, but then it's still giving each individual within that household some money. But it's very generous, as the Saudi government tends to be when distributing benefits to people who struggle to make ends meet.
You're going to hear the term universal basic income a lot more in the next 5 years as AI and robotics start to come together and jobs are just totally eliminated. And there has to be some sort of hedge for that. And, people are talking about, well, imagine if a AI driven robot can take over an entire factory and do all the jobs. It's like, well, okay, then the owner doesn't just get to run the factory, fire everybody, and with no consequences at all. So you'll have to have tax on that. That tax will then feed into a universal basic income fund. I mean, we're getting a little sci-fi here, but it's coming up. So it's
something that has been debated for quite some time, and economists really do like it. Like, the argument for it's quite strong. You can make above that, but that way, at least, instead of, thinking about people under a specific poverty line or whatever, everybody is kind of on equal footing to some degree, and then you can make whatever on top of that. They call it a negative, what is it sometimes referred to? A negative, hang on, where is it? Negative income tax. So instead of taxing people, you're basically just distributing the cash ahead of it.
I'm all for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very generous of the Saudi government. Very good.
Last piece of news is one that makes me very angry, frustrated. We don't talk about it a whole lot. We don't try not to talk politics on our podcast because there are a lot of other stories that we have to tell that are not being told in mainstream media. But I think this one is worth highlighting. Saudi Arabia has joined many different countries around the world in condemning the resumption of Israeli aggression on Gaza today. So the 18th of March. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs expressed Saudi's strong condemnation and the denunciation of the resumption of Israeli aggression on Gaza, including direct attacks on civilian populated areas in blatant disregard for international humanitarian law. They're not the only ones that have come out and said that. Saudi joins countries across Europe, including France, as well as the Middle East, condemning Israelis' resumption of airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. Urging them to return to the ceasefire negotiations. The Israeli military says it's continuing its attacks on Gaza following a series of deadly overnight strikes that killed more than 400 Palestinian people, including many women and children, as happens each and every time these airstrikes are launched, and injured hundreds of others. They do say that they have targeted specific Hamas high-ranking officials. But since the 2nd of March, actually, Israeli authorities have also cut off electricity and the entry of all life-saving supplies into the Gaza Strip, food, medicine, fuel, cooking gas for the 2.1 million people that live there. The UN requests to collect aid that's just sitting at Kerem Shalom crossing that keeps getting rejected. They were not letting it in.
We don't talk about this much, really, for two reasons. One is it's not like the direct focus of the show. The focus of the show is the transformation of Saudi Arabia into a modern state and into a modern global player. And also because, to be honest, it's uncomfortable to talk about. It's such a travesty and it's a shocking situation. And yet one feels so helpless to watch it happen. So it's not like fun or convenient for us to talk about, but it is very important to the first thing that we talked about, which is Saudi Arabia as an emerging nation, not just in the region, but in the world. And it ties into a lot of other things we talked about here today on the show, right? I mean, Saudi Arabia is rising, it's ascending, and it's now playing a very important role in diplomatic mediation for Ukraine and Russia, for other conflicts. And so that involves Saudi Arabia, and people in Saudi Arabia are very upset about what's happening, and I think that that's right, and they should be. And they're just, for me, really, there isn't anything I can say. My country, my home country, is enabling this and supporting it, and I try to talk with people about it, and they usually have no idea what's actually going on. So it's really sad, and really, this seems just like such a step in the wrong direction for Israel, and just really hoping that it stops, and that there's not just that it stops, but that there's ultimately justice for the Palestinian people who deserved it before what was happening in the last 2 years. So, yeah.
On that note,
Yeah, I like how we put this on that sad note. Let's wrap up this episode, but I think it's an important topic. I'm glad we're bringing it up. But yeah, thanks for the show, Dr. Hanno. Very well done. I will see you next time.
See you soon.